1.
Hi everyone. Welcome to the Planning a Smartphone Deployment for Your Officers webinar brought to you by Samsung. This is Jonathan Kozlowski, Managing Editor for Southcom Law Enforcement Media. I'll be your MC for today's discussion. Led by our panel of 3 industry experts, we'll be walking through a comprehensive roadmap to deploying mobile phones to officers in the field. Along the way, we'll cover planning your initiative, carrier selection, device management, security and CJIS compliance, as well as how mobiles can help simplify your workflow. If joining us live, you should have the ability to enter and submit questions. A question and answer period will be at the end. Our 3 experts today are Dale Stockton, a 32-year veteran of law enforcement, having worked in all areas of police operations and retired as a police captain from Carlsbad, California. He's managed major technology projects for public safety, including personnel locate devices and license plate recognition systems. We have Scott McDonald, Vice President of Public Safety Strategy for TriTech. He has more than 15 years of experience developing public safety products and strategy, having had leadership roles at various companies in law enforcement, and serves on advisory boards for regularly speaks at industry events like CJIS, APCO, and NENA. And lastly, we have Todd Maxwell, Senior Manager of Business Development and Innovation, supporting the federal and public safety sales teams at Samsung Electronics America. Todd is focused on developing Samsung's endpoint security solution, along with driving workplace with the mobile first soldier/officer. Dale, would you like to start us off? What might be some of the what-if benefits for officers?
Sure, Jonathan. Thank you, and welcome to the audience. You know, it's really an exciting time for public safety. I've been doing this for a long time, and I can't think of another period when there was so much opportunity for technology to help our officers in the field work smarter and be safer and do it very cost effectively. So just pose these questions to yourself as we start this webinar, and then as we go through, think about the possibilities. And you may very well think of things that haven't even been thought of yet. That's part of the excitement in this, is that there's new and emerging opportunities as people put this in the field and see how it's used. And you'll actually hear from Todd and Scott some of the input they've gotten from agencies they've worked with. So what if you could run queries and have full access to critical information even when you were outside of your car? If you could, with a glance at your risk, see situational awareness data or critical data regarding the subject that you're dealing with at the time, could you have a single device that supports all your computing, regardless of your assignment, whether you're in the station, in the car, or in the field? And perhaps more importantly, could that single device do all 3 of those? What if you had a device that could actually notify dispatch that you were in trouble, or activate your body-worn camera without you having to do anything if you suddenly became involved in an incident like a foot pursuit? Pretty neat stuff. So let's jump in here and take a deeper dive. Computers in the cars have become pretty much ubiquitous. We see patrol cars with computers in the cars. Officers depend on them. It's been that way for at least a couple of decades in many agencies. But we're at a point now where we have some opportunities. Smartphones are actually able to extend that capability beyond the car. And if you think about it, the computer in the car, if that's what you're reliant on, it requires the officer to be in the car. Now that's kind of counter to what we're hearing from agencies around the country, that they want to encourage their officers to be out and engage the public. And if you're in a non-patrol assignment, it's difficult to have that access to information that you need. And there's always the expense factor. So at this point, I'll just pose the question to Todd. What's your perspective on the role of the smartphone and how you can partner with public safety?
Thank you, Dale, and thank everybody for joining and listening to us today. So one of the things that we thought was interesting was we wanted to go around as we started getting into this arena and start posing questions to public safety users and responders and officers. And one of the things that we started seeing in the field is because of budgetary issues and how expensive tough books and how they're sort of tied to cars and these ruggedized laptops are tied to cars, a lot of times they sacrifice on mobility. And what we started to see was a lot of people, officers, and like myself, carry mobile phones with them all the time. So we started pondering the idea of how we could work with agencies to make them more mobile, to have a solution that would take them from in the field to in the car to in the office. And could we have something that would broach all three areas to allow this seamless workability? And we started looking at all the different technologies that Samsung creates. And we have the benefit of being a very large company that creates our own manufacturing line and controls everything from beginning to end. So when we look at solutions, we have our own research facilities, we have our own development facilities. So if we see a need, we're able to look at those needs and develop towards that. So we started looking at all of our portfolios and seeing how we could start helping officers with solutions and what partners and areas we would need to pull together and to help them with their day-to-day work. And so we really just started looking at how we could take something that we use every day. Like, for example, I have my phone and I pull it out and I look at it, check some emails, and then I come into work and sometimes I'm doing conference calls and doing other work, and then I get in the office and I'm doing work. How could I take that and make it something small and affordable that would help officers every day? And that's really been our focus, is tying in all of our different solutions and then working with partners like TriTech to create these everyday solutions that officers use and tie them into our phones and our solutions. And we'll sort of get a little bit more into those in a little bit.
Dale? Thank you, Todd. The opportunity for agencies to use the sheer utility of the smartphone is really great. Sure, it can do the things that the in-car computer can do, but consider this. You've got an always available communication device in terms of contacting parents of a runaway juvenile, for instance, using the smartphone's camera, video recorder, voice dictation, issuing electronic citations, leveraging the biometric capability of the phone, doing a language translator, identifying a pill in the field, even peripherals that can be added such as forward-looking infrared or scanning a fingerprint. So the opportunities are already there, and new ones are emerging every day. One of the keys, though, is having your smartphone work with your computer-aided dispatch system. And with that, I'll turn it over to Scott from TriTech and let him tell you about what they're seeing from their customers and how mobile is so powerful and married with CAD.
Thanks, Dale. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here today. You know, as we talk about exchanging information with officers in the field, firefighters in the field, the EMTs, CAD immediately comes into play as really the conduit or the control point that facilitates that exchange. Because CAD is that system that has all of the knowledge of every unit, every incident, real-time location updates from both, in making sure that the dispatcher or the field supervisors or others in a command center are monitoring all of that. You know, as the largest CAD and RMS provider now, TriTech has been bringing access to the field for decades, to units, but traditionally just to laptops in the vehicles, right? And as new devices have started to become available, it's most logical that an extension to those devices and an extension to the CAD system itself makes its way into the hands of our responders and to our officers. Apps on those devices need to connect to the CAD. So whether units are using their smartphone as a companion to a laptop or if it's their only device, they get those same type of capabilities as they've had now for decades. But that they be smarter as well, that they take into account the form factor of the device, they take into account the usage of those applications, the users of those applications in the environment that they're in. From a mobile perspective, and from a mobile combined with CAD, and from a device perspective and a smartphone connected with CAD, what we always aim to do in what is the mission of really public safety software is to save time and allow the users to be more efficient regardless of the device that they're using. Obviously keep them safe by bringing information to them and alerting them proactively of dangers or environmental conditions they may need to know about, and really bring information and intelligence to every user regardless of the device or the location that they're on. And those are essentially primary functions of CAD. And now that smartphones have become more prevalent in policing and in law enforcement and in fire and EMS, those capabilities become even greater, and we can do a lot more with them. For example, having accurate location information of an officer outside of the vehicle, not just when they're inside tethered to that laptop or that GPS device. When they're out of the car, brings a whole new level of intelligence to both the on-scene commander as well as back in the dispatch center. Dale?
Excellent. So, Scott, a question for you. You covered a lot of ground there. We can probably grasp pretty quickly the computer-aided dispatch connection with mobile, but records management systems, certainly complementary to this. The role of mobile, if you could speak to that, and if you'd also just perhaps make a comment about your industry as a whole and where they are in terms of supporting the mobile platform.
Sure, great question. You know, as we look at how smartphone usage in public safety has really evolved, the need for capabilities beyond just monitoring what's going on has evolved with it, right? So at TriTech, we're on our second generation of mobility application built specifically for devices other than laptops, i.e. smartphones and tablets. And what we're seeing is the usage of those devices, yes, are complements and companions to officers when they leave their vehicle, but there are a whole new group of users now that have access to information to be able to collect information and to be able to use information in a variety of environments. A great example of that is, let's say, for major events that are occurring, being able to have a lot of officers that are on foot and not tethered to a laptop or a vehicle. Operations such as airport police that do not have vehicles inside the terminals and have those smartphones available. You know, the first generation of application really tended to just allow those officers to view or do very quick entry of status change or a comment. And how that's evolving now is the ability to interact with the systems more, not just real time during an event, but also after the fact, to be able to collect an image or an audio clip or be able to add notes to not just a CAD dispatch call, but now generate those notes or those comments or an image or an attachment to a case report that you'll be writing, or actually start that case. The evolution of smartphone usage has really led us to look at it more holistically, not just for response, but really for the entire workflow of public safety. And that's what I think we're seeing now start to become more and more adopted. Dale?
Excellent. Excellent. So let's talk about getting started on a new program, or if you have an existing program, how to expand on it. It's probably not a lot different because for the majority of agencies are underutilizing any smartphones that they have in the field given the recent development of support like Tritech has with their mobile aspect on CAD. So let's just walk through these quickly here. You want to take a look at your end user and what you want them to be able to do. You want to take a look at your existing infrastructure so that you don't unnecessarily bring in another system. You may already have some baseline capabilities in-house. You need the reality check on your budget. Is it going to allow you to accomplish your desired capabilities? If not, you may need to scale them. Identify stakeholders and assign a project manager. This PM aspect is really important in something like this. Somebody needs to be directly responsible for overseeing this and marshaling it forward. You want to make sure that your vendor, your CAD RMS vendor, is supportive and able to deliver what you want in terms of mobile options. Not all CAD vendors are at that point. So do a due diligence in that regard. Have a candid discussion with your vendor in terms of what the capabilities are, and if they're not online yet, when they will be online. When you begin to roll this out, scale it. Start with a pilot group so you can make course corrections without having to do it on a large and expensive scale. Establish those baseline capabilities and then build on those, and make sure your people in the field hear about the successes so they begin to buy into the program. And then quickly on policy and training. Both of these are often overlooked. They're both very important. If you're going to allow your folks to have some level of personal use of the phone, then you should identify that in your policy. They should know what to expect. If you're going to lock it down and control it closely, then that should be in the policy. In terms of training, one thing that you definitely want to have in your training is an emphasis on the need for security and password control. And that feeds right into this last bullet, prioritizing device management and security. You can get yourself into a lot of trouble real quickly, both in the eye of the public and with the oversight agencies in terms of using criminal justice data if you don't do this properly. Now I'm going to turn it over to Todd at this point because there is a product, Knox, that's very relevant to this discussion. Todd?
Thank you. And when I first started talking earlier, I was basically referring to how we started doing an investigation into how our solutions could fit and support public safety, and how our vast majority of products might ease some of the workload. And what Scott started talking about is these different applications that can go on top and be incorporated into our phones and our tablets and our wearables. And it all comes back to how do we actually ensure that that data is secure. And so we're now turning towards Knox to sort of talk about, hey, we're providing you a solution, tying in all these applications. We're making your life, trying to make your life easier and more mobile. But how do we ensure that that information is secure? So what Knox, a lot of people ask what Knox is, and Knox basically is a security platform that was invented by Samsung that's built from the chipset up. And what that really means is, what's important to know is that we control, as I mentioned earlier, the entire manufacturing line, from the mining to the creation to the manufacture to the distribution. So we control the entire manufacturing line to ensure that everything is baked in from the chipset at the beginning. And what that really means is that your data is secure at rest and in transit. And we ensure that by going through multiple certification levels through NIAP and FIPS to ensure that all that data is secure. We take what is existing through Android and we add security layers on top of that. And that's what really Knox is about. It's been certified by over 30 countries and rated by Gartner as one of the most secure mobile systems. So when you think about this, why is that important to me? It's important, say you're running and you're in pursuit of somebody and you happen to have your phone in your pocket or on your chest using it as a body camera, or you have it in some other location and it falls off, and a bad guy were to be able to pick it up. Basically what it means is that they can't get access to any of that information. We have multiple biometrics tied into our system, including iris, face scan, fingerprint, that an agency can decide their level and through our EMM program can set those layers. You can even, through your existing or through our EMM, you can even do a remote wipe. So we have these security levels and layers built in, so that end officer doesn't really have to think about whether his device is secure, whether the data is secure, the information being transmitted is secure. It just is, and it's trusted. And that's the whole point of what Knox is, and we try to make it simple for everybody. And if anyone wants to learn more about Knox, at the end we can go on and get very deep into the engineering level of it. And we end up doing that a lot of times on the defense side. But I think, the important part is that we do everything we can. We're on version 3 now to make sure that your data is secure. And we offer that same defense-grade security to all users of our devices. And we're even extending that out to our wearables and other IoT devices. I'm sure you'll hear more about that in a bit.
Thank you, Todd. And you did a great job of showing the support that you provide to public safety. I'm going to go back for just a minute and ask both Todd and Scott. I'll start with Todd. The Knox potential power aside, what resources of support does Samsung offer an agency when you're starting up a new program? There's a lot of bullets here. So what would Samsung view as its role when the agency says, can you help us?
So we're actually having a discussion about this the other day. We have a lot of different features. We're talking about emergency responses and disaster relief. And some agencies are big enough where they have an MDM provider, and some are not. And so we offer a variety of services with our Knox, along with the mobile enrollment, the Knox Configure, the Knox Manage, the Knox Workspace. And I'll just sort of, basically what it is it allows me as an administrator, or say I'm medium-sized agency, I don't have a dedicated IT department, but I want to roll out a solution. And I don't know everything I need to know about technology, so how would I do it? Well, basically the mobile enrollment allows you to take these devices, enroll them, and then allow you as a sergeant or a chief to manage those devices. And you can set up basically a walkthrough configuration level. It allows you to set up what apps are allowed, what VDIs or remote desktops you might want to run, what applications you might want to run. And then you have the Knox Manage, that allows you to manage securely that device. We talked about the remote wipe. And then we have this workspace and what's like a container ship. And what that basically allows is there's a lot of popularity in BYOD right now. And it allows you to basically take all of my work information and put it in an isolated container that's separate from what the officer might be doing with their personal set. So some agencies like the idea of BYOD and some don't. But this gives you the ability to run a secure container ship where all of your information, your secure data, your PII data is all contained within a secure container, which basically isolates this information from the rest. And then you have the Knox platform that we referred to earlier that is ensuring the security of that data, that it's not being hacked, it's not being accessed by people that aren't allowed to access it. And then we've offered a few new features like ePhoto, which basically allows you to manage and get your devices upgraded, the latest security updates on your own. So it just depends on, we have a vast portfolio. They're all backed by Knox and have the Knox name and the Knox security level. So all these different features allow you to sort of pick and choose which you might have, depending on the size of your agencies. And with the configure and the manage, it allows you to sort of get as broad or granular as you want, because as we know, every agency has different needs, and this sort of allows them to customize their solutions to their needs, no matter what their experience level is.
Excellent. So Scott, you've got a lot of experience with customer interaction. You've seen successes and probably some challenges in the field. What do you think the primary considerations, the takeaways should be from this list of 10 that we put out there for the audience?
You know, I would say those agencies where we've seen the greatest success with mobility apps they've really put a lot of effort working, with us at TriTech, with the device providers like Samsung, in sitting down and crafting a plan based on how they want the apps used, right? As consumers today, we're all a little spoiled in that we can just sit down and go to an app store, download an app, and start using it. And with public safety, the actual act of doing that is not dissimilar, right? For a smartphone app, you need it to be simple to install and update. However, you really want to plan out the features, the functions, and the capabilities you want to roll out within your department. And what I've observed is that's best done when you identify the role of the user. And by role, I mean, are you going to roll it out to your supervisors first? Are you going to roll it out to your field officers as companions to their laptops? Is it only going to be to those on foot patrol? Is it going to be used for major events? TriTech's had the opportunity to be the software provider to the cities for the last 3 Super Bowls. And as we see at the end of those events, and you read the after-action reports of those events, all of them had some level of mobile app capability for those officers that were there. So by defining the role of the users, how you're going to implement the usage of the app, the capabilities of it, that's where we've found agencies have the greatest success by defining that up front. Obviously, capabilities can be turned on or off. Policy needs to be built for the use of smartphone apps, just as it has been for laptop-based applications for decades, right? Are you going to allow field-initiated events to come from the app, or are you going to require those to be voice in via radio? Those decisions have to be made and emphasized when you're talking about smartphone apps, just as they were with laptop devices. So I guess the greatest experience we've seen are with those agencies who have planned the deployment out, deployment in the sense of how it's going to be used, and then implemented the policy to ensure that the usage is in line with those. Dale?
All right, excellent. Thank you. So Todd took us through the benefits of Knox. That's a nice transition into the reality of CJIS. CJIS is inherent in most of what most law enforcement agencies do. If you don't comply, you're going to lose your access. And the tricky part is it's an evolving area, and each state has an oversight authority, so there are some variances among the different states. One basic way to make sure you get it right is to engage your agency security officer and your state CJIS rep as resources and understand the operative CJIS sections. But here's what you need to be aware of. There's other agencies going through the same thing that you are. There is a way to accomplish this, and CJIS actually gives you the specifics of what you need. I'm going to let Scott to provide a couple comments regarding customer experiences in this area, and then we'll take a quick look at things that are very specific to mobile devices. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Dale. So obviously CJIS is a pretty complex topic, right? And not just as it relates to smartphones and mobility apps, but across the board in law enforcement technology, guided by CJIS security documents, both at the federal level as well as the state. And I guess one of the most important lessons that we've seen learned by our agencies is that CJIS kind of security doesn't just apply when you're running, CJIS type queries from the phone, right? If you're interacting with CAD, if you're interacting with RMS, there's data that potentially lives within a CAD call because, your NCIC returns were copied and pasted in there and that's available. Or you've done a query into your RMS system and that's got data in it. You need to consider the fact that it's not just CJIS queries that will make you subject to CJIS compliance. So looking at the infrastructure from how the data is encrypted to how it's stored to how it's accessed and authenticated is critical part of this deployment, regardless of whether or not you're having your users run CJIS queries. So I would say look at it holistically. Don't just assume that if you're only doing, statusing or you're only looking up CAD calls that it's not subject to some level of CJIS compliance by your state or by the CJIS security policy. Dale?
Excellent, thank you. So let's take a look. These are out of 5.13.2 of the CJIS policy. This is a subset of the CJIS policy relevant to mobile, and it's designed to specifically lay out the expectations for your mobile device management. Todd took you through Knox and made some references to MDM and its role and its importance. But as you take a look at these, you'll see there's a lot of specific capabilities that CJIS expects you to have, and the reason goes right along the lines with the scenario that Todd offered earlier. If your device becomes compromised or gets lost, for instance, in a fight or pursuit or any other police activity, you want to be able to drill down on that device, lock it, wipe it, disable it, and prevent any type of compromise of that data. So CJIS is beyond the scope of this program. I don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time on it, but I did want to give you this specific section when you're considering the role of an MDM that gives you quite a bit of guidance. So with that, we're going to move on to something a whole lot more interesting, at least to me personally, and that's the wearables. This is game-changing, folks. This is something where it's fair to say the future is here now. This technology is capable of doing what you're about to hear right now. And you can tell by the images that are there on your screen that this watch, and it's understating it to call it a watch, it's, we're calling them wearables now, can provide a lot of great information to an officer with just a glance. But if you're thinking that you have to look at it to get that information, that's not necessarily true. So Todd, would you talk to us about the evolution of the wearable and the public safety perspective and some of the features you've built in to make it work well in the law enforcement environment?
Sure. And just quickly on the previous slide, you had a whole list of items that your MDM should be capable of doing, and that is very much true. And just so you guys are aware, when we develop and we're working through our configure and manage, we incorporated these type requirements into our manage, and then we took it a little bit further that we also manage our wearables. So as Dale was mentioning, we want to be able to manage all the different pieces of our devices, and through our Knox Manage, we can not only manage our phones, but these wearables. So if they were to break off in a struggle or anything, we can actually manage and locate them and do the things that were required on the previous slide. So some of the things we're really sort of excited about doing on our wearable is, as you can see here, there's some of this information that's coming along, but we have the ability not only to have visual displays, we can have haptic tones that come out and identify. We can have different sounds that come out and are programmable to identify different features and assets. We can have verbal. Now, of course, when you have wanted person and other types of information, you're not going to want to read that out verbally in case you're interacting with that person. So in that case, you might want to configure it for haptic responses, a quick beep for okay, or a long haptic stride for a wanted person, just so you know right away without having to look at your watch that you need to react differently. And then with different buttons and different scrolls of the watch, you're able to activate and do certain things. You mentioned earlier that some of the really neat things that we've been incorporating with are some of our partner applications of automatically doing notifications. So say we're in a car and we have the GPS on the car, then we start running after a perp, and our watch realizes that now we're running, so now we activate the GPS so that other units can actually respond to where we're at instead of where the car's at, and then you don't have to get on the radio and constantly update where you're going. It automatically can send that information to the dispatch center and share that. So there's some neat things there. We have the ability with a standalone LTE device to be able to use that for calling for assistance. You can also use different buttons. We've toyed with different partners on body cameras to have different buttons activate body cameras, or we automatically, as Dale mentioned, go into pursuit. It's activating things. We're pulling in heart rate monitors from our device. So if a dispatcher or supervisor sees an elevated heart rate but nothing's being reported, they could check on that officer. And so we've been trying to tie in, and we're always looking for new feedback. So we're starting to do proof of concepts in multiple areas, trying to not only work with our software partners like TriTech and pushing the limits on what we can do, but also getting that feedback from listeners and agencies around the U.S. to say, what would you like to see next? What would you like us to incorporate? Is there something we can do here? You know, we work on this, one of the features that we work on the federal side is continuous multi-factor authentication, where we're using our chipsets, we're using the gyroscopics in the watch and then the phone, and your heart rate and your gait from walking and your face and your eye, all these things continuously create a trust score that allows you access. So, you know, when we get a problem presented to us, we like to see how we can put all of our resources to bear fruit for that solution. So this is why it's really important for us, because we're in our second year, full on 1 year of getting invested in the public safety market. So now, as I mentioned in the beginning, we're watching and learning, and now we're trying to do proof of concepts and develop and pull in all the best concepts that we're starting to hear and tweak our solutions for better use cases.
That's great. Scott, what are you hearing from your customers in terms of what they want your software to be able to do through their wearables?
A great question. So, you know, TriTech first started working with Samsung just about a year ago now, and our initial discussions actually were surrounding the wearables concept and how smartwatches could interact with CAD system and RMS systems in a way that still provided those time, safety, and intelligence benefits that we would through smartphones and other devices. And, you know, in order to do that, that's a really exciting topic to first start off with, right? The concept of a wearable in a smartwatch in law enforcement. So brought it to some focus groups of our clients, and not surprisingly, some of the first reactions were more concern-oriented, that we were going to require, you know, an officer to constantly be looking at their watch to get information, or distract them from being in the situation at the time. So as we develop the use cases, some of which Todd has mentioned, and we've now built our prototypes in earliest versions of our smartwatch design, it really focuses in on providing notification to the watch in ways that doesn't distract the user, right? So being able to send that type of haptic vibration feedback to an officer if they've run someone that is wanted, right? To be able to have them set an emergency status into CAD with either a motion or a tap of the device, to be able to do quick status changes or retrieve quick pieces of information that don't require a lot of focus or time to read. So as we've started to develop these and focus in on the use cases that would be most valuable, those are the ones that start to bubble to the surface, right? Get information to the watch in a way that doesn't require the wearer or the user to spend a lot of time looking at it. And then more importantly, be able to take information from the watch, the location of the user, the fact that they may be in pursuit because of the motion, the fact that they have put themselves into an emergency, and distribute that to other devices. So while this is a newer technology, I think the use cases that have initially been identified are ones that are going to provide great value to police currently. Dale?
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate both of you on that. And it's literally really a glimpse into the future, but it's available now. So let's take a look at another area that, to me, this is truly game-changing. It's a significant shift in the law enforcement traditional paradigm of the computer in the car and being essentially relegated to being in that car if you want that access to information. This is the power of DEX, desktop experience. Allows the smartphone to support the officer regardless of the environment, regardless of the assignment. And I keep saying that, regardless of assignment, because not all our people have ready access to a car. So in essence, what DEX does, it leverages the power of the smartphone, the computing power of the smartphone, and in a car will marry up with a dedicated display and keyboard, giving the officer full in-car computer capability. In a station, similar, it's paired with a display and a keyboard. You don't need to maintain a full desktop computer. The officer's files are right there available. He or she is networked right into the department's infrastructure, the secure side of the agency's network, and then in the field, where once again, regardless of assignment, full capabilities. And you think about this, to have that one device support those areas, all environments, virtually all situations, opens up new possibilities and significant cost savings. So this is very much a work in progress, and I'm going to ask Todd to chime in on DEX didn't originally come out with public safety in mind, but Samsung certainly realized the potential. So where are you on that, Todd, and how do you continue to move this forward with input from public safety?
Thanks, Dale. So, it's an interesting aspect because you're right. If you look at the slide in the middle, the end station, and that's sort of where we were focused. And we had a puck, and you drop your phone in, and you use that phone as a computer. You open up your remote desktop. You open up Office 365 on the phone. All the apps work the same regardless. You open up your email. You're doing all your emails like you normally would in a full window size. And then we started looking at public safety and how that puck in that scenario would change, how we could add some ruggedized, either use our active series phones or some ruggedized cases to our phones and make it a full solution. And we started modifying, and we just actually released a new DEX that's more, can turn, you can either use the puck style or it basically lays flat, and you can use it as a touch screen, and it has the USB support too. But then we modified the DEX for the in-car. And we're actually, it's funny enough, is we're through these proof of concepts, we're getting feedback right now. We're developing multiple proof of concepts to get feedback into our next generation of DEX development, and whether we do a standalone one for public safety and the federal side. So while we are a large company and we move very consumer focused, we have a lot of dedicated energy into the public safety and federal side, where we're really garnering feedback on how to create enterprise solutions for these industries. So one of the big things you see is in that first picture is how the DEX is working in the car. And that's one example. We work with the major mounting agencies like RAM and Havas and other ones to make sure that the system sits in the car. And the whole point is, like Dale was talking about, is you have the ability to have your phone, you're working, you're answering emails, you get in, you start your shift, you drop it in, and it's basically using a pen system, so you don't have to worry about dongles or anything. You have a pen system, you drop it in, you start doing your work, you get out, you're doing some evidence capture, you come back, you put it back in the car, you finish up, you get dispatched to another scene, you put en route on scene, you get there, you get out, do some more evidence capture, you come back, you have to do your report, your shift's over, haven't finished your report yet, grab my phone out, go into the station, pop it in there, finish my report, and then you guys allow for home use. I have a soccer game for my kids, so I got to run home and finish it, but I need this report. So I pop it in my deck station at home and finish a report. So it just allows you this flexibility to work anywhere, anytime, which we've gotten a lot of feedback on. And one of the big things that we've gotten feedback on is when you look at how the carriers offer deals on phones, you're basically getting the phones for free. So then your only cost is for the ruggedized screen and keyboard, which is about $1,200. So when you compare that with traditional ruggedized laptops that go in cars, not only do you add the increased security that Knox provides, but you also have the mobility of taking it from car, office, and home, and you have it at a cheaper price. And so that's really what we're trying to focus on, and that's sort of what we saw from that beginning phase to now, is really being able to provide agencies, because we all know everybody's going through budget crunches, so how can we provide those three things, the security, the mobility, the agility, and the cost effectiveness into a solution that would work. And so this is what we're focused on, and we love to hear some feedback as we do these POCs, and if you have additional input or thoughts, we welcome those.
Excellent. From practitioner, I can tell you this is really exciting stuff. So, Scott, from a software vendor perspective, talk about, this is quite a challenge, these different environments and different screen sizes. Are you continually modifying or updating your product to take advantage of these, and is your industry as a whole embracing that approach?
Yeah, great question. You know, as we design our solutions, especially our solutions for the field, right, we have to account for the devices and the size of the screens, and most importantly, the user interaction needs of those applications. So whether we're talking about a smartphone-based app, a tablet-based app, a laptop-based app, whether you're using it for just receipt of information, whether you're using it for data collection, the concept of both responsive design, which means an application can adjust based on the device that's being used, or you're building specific applications to run on a specific environment, it creates the challenge of transition, right? And as Todd spoke of, while smartphones are very useful for collection of the information we're talking about, today they're still not the most effective for entering a lot of information that may be required in a state accident report, or extensive diagramming that may be required to diagram an accident scene. So being able to take a device like a smartphone and transition it into a larger screen with a keyboard and a mouse, provides a lot of capabilities there, and not limit our users to have to log into one application, log into another as they change devices. So we definitely think that this type of capability is very useful out in the field.
Excellent. So hopefully the audience has seen some things that pique your interest, cause you to want to learn more. One of the things we continue to see is this technology allows officers to work smarter and with greater information while giving them enhanced situational awareness, and ultimately that leads to better officer safety, which is something that's important to all of us. We haven't really touched on this too much, but one of the beauties of the smartphone and wearable approach is it can be easily scaled. You can try it and improve, expand it as you see those capabilities and as your budget will support it. And finally, this comment, the Android platform has proven itself to be very robust, and I continue to see new apps, new peripherals that are designed to take advantage of smartphone capabilities. So this really is an exciting time for those involved in public safety. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to our moderator, Jonathan. I understand we have some questions. Jonathan?
Yep. Hi. We have a few questions. As soon as we start talking about devices and communication technologies, one thing that's always brought up is interoperability. Scott, is there a benefit for a police and fire department in the same city to both deploy smartphone apps for interoperability?
Great question. There's huge benefit there, obviously, as we see the numbers and types of incidents, unfortunately, that occur in our country, from a multi-victim incident perspective, active shooters, but also for planned events such as Super Bowls and conventions and things of that nature. We're seeing a lot more collaborative work between law enforcement and fire and medical personnel. For years, CAD has done a great job of interoperating those agencies by virtue of them running in a combined, interconnected CAD environment. When you look at it from a mobility perspective, having police officers who are responding and firefighters and medics who are responding to the same scene, being able to see the location of each other and share that information down to the device level can add so much more in terms of collaboration and effectiveness across those types of services that are being provided.
Great, thank you. And Todd, I'd like to put you on the spot here. How do your solutions supporting what the carriers are doing onto the public safety network?
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody caught the launch, but Samsung just launched their new device, the S9 Plus, and it's one of the first commercially available devices with Band 14 capabilities. So that's, we're doing everything we can with first responders in mind, and one of the big drives was to make sure any new devices that come out support those needs. And that was the whole idea behind the Band 14, being able to support that and being able to support FirstNet and be able to support what the other networks are starting to do. And we're getting involved with different agencies, and we're doing a hackathon with FirstNet to really showcase our solutions and drive public safety awareness and what we're doing in that area, but also drive some improvement to our devices and how we can better assist law enforcement. We also have our push-to-talk that's going to be coming out later this year. It's a dedicated PSLTE device that will be able to run push-to-talk. It'll be ruggedized. It'll be able to support all the different bands. And if you want to learn more about that, we have some information about that, where it was launched and actually used at the Olympics in South Korea, and recently was awarded the Seoul Public Safety Network device for the UK. So a lot of exciting. It's being developed and going into testing soon here in the US. So we're trying to create a holistic approach with all of our devices that will work together to support public safety.
And keep you on the line, how do you future-proof solutions so that devices are not antiquated as soon as they're purchased? It's always a concern.
Right, and so something that sort of evolves into that naturally is that most carriers end up offering free devices every 2 years, so they sort of take the future-proofing out of it for us. But what we end up doing is offering software updates, security updates, and we're always looking to tie new technologies. We're experimenting and looking into different Bluetooth technologies, different Wi-Fi technologies on the federal side. We're always just incorporating some of the newest features. You see some of the newest features we've incorporated into our phone technologies. And with the advent of how the carriers and how the pricing solutions work there, they pretty much take care of themselves. On the wearables and some of the DEX features, we're looking at different ways to make sure communication paths and the security of those is never compromised. But again, our goal is always future-proof, but we can only do so much. But we would love to have some feedback on things that can assist us in those areas.
Great, thank you. Unfortunately, it looks like we're just about of time. I just want to allow everybody a little bit time so they can get to their next appointment. Any questions that we did not get to, we'll do our best to answer via email individually. Thank you for everyone for joining us online. We appreciate you setting some time for us today. Have a great day. Stay safe.